Good day. This is video 4 in a series of videos talking about lesson planning. In this video, we are going to discuss the very important idea of writing lesson outcomes. This is something that students struggle with a lot, and I hope that today I will be able to break it down for you and to show you that if you understand the basic principles of writing lesson outcomes, it really becomes easier as you have all heard about SMART goals. Now, the SMART concept can also be used when writing lesson outcomes. Our lesson outcomes should be specific. Our students need to know what exactly we expect of them to do. It needs to be measurable, so we need to be able to measure it using Bloom's verbs. If I tell you that you must understand something, there's no way that I can measure understanding. But if my lesson outcome is for you to describe or explain something to me, then I will be able to measure it. If I ask you to analyze, I will be able to measure. Lesson outcomes needs to be achievable. So we need to be very conscientious about thinking about the age of our learners. We need to have age-appropriate lesson outcomes. One of the biggest pitfalls in writing lesson outcomes is that students create lesson outcomes that are too difficult for their learners, or it might be too easy for their learners, and learners struggle to reach it or they find it boring. Good lesson outcomes are result focused, and as I said, it should be measured. It's very important for you to remember that activities are never outcomes. So you cannot say at the end of this lesson, students will complete a worksheet. That is not a lesson outcome. Activities are the tools we use to help us reach our outcomes. Outcomes are also time bound, and that is why we will always start with at the end of the lesson or at the end of the cycle. Once you are full-time teachers, you will soon realize that most teachers do not use lesson plans as such. They will use cycle plans or weekly plans. So then you will adjust and you won't say at the end of the lesson, but you will rather refer to at the end of the cycle. Whichever you use, it needs to be time-bound. Let me give you an example of a poor lesson outcome. After our lesson on healthy eating habits, use one period to write a 500-word essay about a journey, make a photo collage about your visit, and present an oral to the class where you share your experiences. If you look at those outcomes, in the first place, writing a 500-word essay about a journey is not relevant to a lesson about healthy eating habits. Making a photo collage about a visit is not relevant either. You may present an oral where you share your experiences about healthy eating habits, but think about the time issue. Will it be possible for one learner to do all three of these things in one period? So not only is two of my lessons outcome not at all related to my topic, but it is also way too much for a learner to complete in one period. So it's very important when you write lesson outcomes that you think about the SMART concepts. If we move on, I want to teach you 4 easy steps to learning lesson outcome writing. And if you memorize these 4 phrases, I promise you it's going to be much easier. So here we go. In the first place, start off with your time frame that we spoke about. At the end of the lesson or cycle, who? The respondent. What will they do? They will be able to, and here you are going to insert a Bloom's verb, and then fourthly, content. In Afrikaans, you will swap around number 4 and 3. So in Afrikaans, you will say, aan die einde van hierdie les sal die leerder inhoud kan werkwoord. Okay, so let's get back to this. The time frame at the end of the lesson, the learner will be able to, and then you pick a verb from the Bloom's category, and in number 4, you list the content. Let me give you an example. So if we look at our example again, defining and explaining is lower level, higher thinking, and drafting a concept business plan is higher level thinking. So the older your learners get, the more you are going to move towards higher level thinking and the less towards just lower level thinking, which is memorizing and explaining. Please download a list of Bloom's taxonomy verbs, and as you set your lesson outcomes, use those verbs to help you. General tips for writing outcomes. Keep it simple. Please keep to the little structure that I gave you. Make sure that you do not have too many outcomes, a maximum of 3 per lesson. And I want to tell you that when you do get to a school and you do a lesson, do not be too concerned if you do not reach all the outcomes. It is better to tell learners, right guys, we've reached 2 of the 3 outcomes that we wanted to today. We will look at the 3rd outcome tomorrow. Than trying to cram 3 outcomes into a lesson and the learners do not really meet those outcomes. When you set your lesson outcomes, make sure that you have one concept. Don't speak about more than one concept. Do not say, define a lesson plan, discuss the principles of a good business, and name 5 dangers that a new business can have. Now you have 3 concepts. Pick one concept and stick to that for the duration of the lesson. It's also important that you have one pertinent question. Let me remind you what a pertinent question is. That is the link of your concept to the real world. Also use only one verb per outcome. So do not write a lesson outcome like, at the end of the lesson, you must be able to define and explain a business plan. That is in fact 2 outcomes. Only one verb per outcome. Make sure that your lesson outcomes build upon each other so that you scaffold. If you reach lesson outcome 1, then you will be able to do lesson outcome 2. As I said, remember lower and higher order thinking. Remember to consult the CAPS document, because the CAPS document gives you a lot of guidance on which Bloom's verbs you should use, and it also indicates the depth that you should go into every lesson outcome. A final reminder, activities are not outcomes. It's okay not to reach all your outcomes. When it comes to lesson outcomes, the best way of getting it right is by doing it over and over and over again. Keep it simple. Make sure that it is as simple as possible so that your learners can reach it in an easier way and so that you really have control over what you want learners to do in your lesson. If your lesson outcomes are strong, it's going to be so much easier to write the rest of your lesson plan. When you think of writing a lesson, lesson outcomes is step 1 in the quest towards constructive alignment. And in the next video, I will explain this concept of constructive alignment further.